Morning everybody, welcome back to Monday Morning Briefing episode number 5. I got it this week. We're back in the shop, it's Monday morning, and we've got quite a bit of stuff we need to do this week. We got a lot done last week. One of the main things that we got done last week was launch the knife scabbard video, and so if you saw that, it's just a really good item. It's an easy item to make, they're fun, customers love them. And if you're doing leather work in particular, you've been doing leather work for any amount of time, you've had somebody probably ask you to make a knife sheath or a knife scabbard or a knife pouch, whatever you want to call them. And I actually debated a lot on that video on whether to call them sheaths or scabbards. And so I was going to enlighten you a little bit this morning on something that I found, because I've always called them knife scabbards. I don't know why, it's just what we've always called them. So I decided to research to see what it actually was. Is it actually called a knife sheath or a knife scabbard? So I went online, just a real cursory, quick research. I didn't dive into it real deep, but I did find an interesting article online, and I can't remember where I found it or what, but the guy made swords and daggers. So he's a blacksmith, he makes swords and daggers and stuff, and he actually had an article online explaining the difference between sheaths and scabbards. Now in the realm of swords and daggers, his take on it was that a sheath is actually just an all leather sheath or covering for a sword or a dagger, and then if it has any kind of metal associated with it, then it would fall into a scabbard. And I'd never heard that before. Obviously, I don't make swords or daggers or anything like that. I would like a sword, though. One of these days, I'm going to get a big broadsword for the shop just to hang up, because I think it'd be cool. In his article, he was talking about that, so that a scabbard actually has a metal liner in it, is what he explained. What I understood what he was talking about was that it has a metal liner to it or something like that, to where it's more of a metal sheath for a sword or dagger, and a sheath would be all leather. So I don't know, that's what he explained on there, and I thought that was pretty interesting because I'd never heard that before. So anyway, we ended up, most people call them knife sheaths, so that's what we ended up calling them on there. But I think a lot of people call them scabbards as well, knife scabbards, pocket knife scabbards, something like that. And scabbard, for some of y'all that can't understand my accent, would be S-C-A-B-B-A-R-D, scabbard. That's what we call them. But anyway, so we got that video out, and it did good. It's doing really well. A lot of people have gotten that pattern pack that goes with that, and we want to thank every one of you very much for doing that. I hope you enjoy the pattern pack. Like I said, there's 6 different tooling patterns per window. I had somebody email and say all 3 of these scabbards are the same size. The scabbard pattern, the cut pattern on the outside, is the same size. The tooling window is what's different. Let me go over it again. So these are 3, I got 3 different patterns here. All 3 of the cut patterns are the same size. So we did it like that on purpose. I did it like that years ago in the shop so that we could click out and make a clicker die, and you are welcome to make a clicker die of this pattern. But you make a clicker die and you cut out 100 or 1,000 of these things, and they're all the same size. But what's different is the actual tooling window in there. So that piece that I drew in, that's what sizes the knife scabbard for a particular knife. And so if you look at all 3 of these, they're all 3 a different size. And if you have a particular knife that you make a lot of sheaths for, you can definitely alter this window to fit that particular knife if you need it to go down into the sheath a little bit deeper, or if maybe it's a little thicker. For instance, my wife carries a case trapper, double blade case trapper, very common knife. That's for this pattern right here. That knife is super common. They make a bunch of them. Everybody carries one. Tons of people carry that knife. The only difference is hers has a hoof pick in it, and so it's one of the blades has been removed, and they add it's almost looks like a gut hook, but it's not sharp. And so if any of you are familiar with the hunting knives that have like a gut hook on there, it kind of looks like that, but it's not sharp at all. It's just a bent piece, and it makes like an L shape, and that's in there. With that being in there, it makes the knife a little wider. So when I make one for her, for that knife, or anybody that carries the hoof pick knife, I've just got to move this line out a little bit, so that when you fold it and sew it, it'll sew correctly. So that's the only thing, but easily changed. If you make a particular knife scabbard for a lot of people, for a particular knife, just make you a tooling window that'll hopefully fit on this pattern, this scabbard pattern, this sheath pattern, and then you'll have a tooling window, and you don't need to worry about trying to size it. It'll fit every time. It may take you a couple little forms to kind of figure out exactly how far you need to alter the original tooling window. Other thing is, If you're wanting to make, these are tap-offs. These are not something I would make a knife sheath out of. These are my patterns. So this is a tap-off. I've explained this in the video again previously, but I'll do it again here real quick. If you want to make a tap-off on the pattern pack that you got, they're actually you'll notice this tooling window is reversed and in the proper position to where if you were to trace that off and then transfer that to your knife sheath pattern, then it'll be in the right position. If you look at this one here, it's underneath the belt loop piece, so it's on the wrong side, and it's also backwards, so it doesn't matter so much on the case trapper, but the other one you actually need to flip this over too. But that's done because what I do is if I've got a knife sheath, a blank one with me, just sitting on the table, and I've wet it down, and I'm going to make a knife sheath for somebody. It's a right-handed knife sheath. This is in reverse, so I can put it face down, and then, like I did in the video, and then tap it off with a hammer, and that will transfer this line on the correct part of the original, or of the one I'm going to tool. That's called a tap off. You can make a tap off for any kind of little pattern. If you got, and even on these, if you wanted to tool, if you tooled one up, if you say you transfer the tooling window, you get it all carved or drawn in there, and you got a little pattern that you really like, and you want to make a tap off of that, carve that one. Go ahead and carve it, and then let it dry really good. Then once it's dried, you can come back, grab another one of these scabbard, cut out another one, and then wet it down. Then take the one you just carved, flip it over on top of that scabbard, tap it in there really good. It'll transfer all those lines, and it'll transfer it backwards, okay? Then you can take it and carve that one, then let that one dry. Now you have a permanent reverse copy tap off for a right-handed scabbard, okay? So that's how it kind of works if you're gonna make a tap off. You do the same thing with belts. If you got a belt pattern that you just really like, carve up some of it, just a section of it, to where you can put it end to end, and then you can take a little scrap piece of belt leather, put it down, wet it and put it down, then put your carved piece on top and beat that in, and then that'll transfer those lines. Basically all it's going to do is going to do a reverse of it, okay? So it's going to do a reverse. So if you're wanting to do a left-handed, I have another set of these that are just like this, but they're for left-handed. So when I flip those, because if like I have one die made for this, and so if I want to make left-handed knife sheaths where the scabbard's on this side, which very seldom, most even left-handed people will just want their sheath on the right-hand side, but sometimes I do get a request for that. What I'll usually do is, or what I've done in the past when I have a clicker and use my die, is I'll just flip the leather I'm cutting them out of, rough outside up, click that die, take that die and click out a bunch of them, and then the smooth side, they're actually backwards. This belt loop is now on the other side, so they're in reverse, and that'll make them a left-handed sheath if they want to wear it on the left-hand side. It's just a couple little tricks with that, but that little pattern pack, there's 18 patterns, 6 for each one. For each one of these different tooling windows, there's 6 tooling patterns. Honestly, they're not that complicated. If you wanted to scale them up or down on a copier, or just adjust them a little bit to fit another one of the tooling windows, you can certainly do that. So there's 18 different tooling patterns in there. It's not a very large pack as far as printer, ink, and paper requirements, which I think is good, because some of our last project pattern packs have been rather large. So you better be sure you got some ink in your printer, because some of them are 20-something pages. And we are working, just to let you know, we are working with or fixing to start working with a printer out of LaGrange, which we've already spoken with, and they're able to do the bigger pattern pack. So we just got to figure out how we're going to create them. But this is one out of a Saddle Maker's journal, just a big page, and that's what we're going to do, is something like that, like the old style pull-out patterns and pattern packs. Everybody's seen those. You buy them in a big envelope type deal and pull them out, and they lay out real nice. We're going to do some of those for that, because we're getting a lot of calls for the rope bags and the chaps and stuff like that. So we're going to try to do them on that. Now those will be physical packs we'll have to mail out to you. They will not be a digital file for that. And we're thinking about going ahead as well and taking all the patterns that we've already created and slowly start adding those to where we have physical printed packs of those older pattern styles as well. So we'll do that. We've also got some really neat stuff coming up towards the end of the month that we'll announce at that time, that I think is going to help you guys a lot with the projects, with the different projects that we do. We're just going to start it out in a little trial run and see how it goes, but we'll give you more details on that as it comes. Speaking of stuff that you've probably been aggravated that we haven't talked about, but we've kind of hinted around about, is the podcast. Podcast is live. So many of y'all have seen that on our social media, on our Instagram, and we shared it on our stories and also on our DG Leathercraft Facebook page. Yeah, we got a DG Leathercraft Facebook page as well, so not just DG Saddlery. So be sure and check that one out. We share a lot of our articles and projects and stuff on that. But we did launch the podcast on Friday. It went out to all the newsletter subscribers. So that's why I always tell you, be sure and sign up for the Leathercraft newsletter, because that's usually who we send stuff out to first. When it's something like the podcast or something new or a new product or something, we'll usually send it out in a newsletter first, because we just feel like you need to be, if you want to be in the know and know exactly when something drops, then become a part of our newsletter. We don't bug you, we don't spam you, we don't send you, half the time I don't send an email for a month or two, but that may get more and more volume as we go along and have more and more things to tell you about. But yeah, we sent it out through the newsletter, and the response has been overwhelmingly great, and we want to thank you guys for all of that. We only had 2 episodes on there. I wanted to do 3, and I've got one that we've already almost wrapped up editing on, and that one will drop this week. I don't know exactly what day, but I just couldn't wait anymore, and I figured let's just do it on Friday and get it out there. But it was we had the intro episodes on there. That's just me talking about the show, what we're going to do, and answer a couple questions on there and stuff. But then we get into more of what the format will be like going forward, which will be an interview style show. And so the first interview, I felt like, well, let's just have our first interview with one of the biggest guys in leathercraft and a good buddy of mine, and that's Aaron Heiser from Maker's Leather Supply. And so we did an interview with him, and we learned a lot about Aaron and his business and how he got into leatherwork and that kind of thing. And it was just kind of a little relaxed conversation, and everybody said they really enjoyed that episode. So we want to thank you very much for that. If you haven't seen it or you don't know about it, it's called Lost Trade, and that is our new podcast, and it's on Apple and Spotify. A lot of people have told me, like, hey, you need to get it on this and get it on that. We'll work on getting it everywhere. I just know Apple and Spotify were the 2 biggest ones, and so we just got it on there, and I'll figure out how to get it on all the other platforms as we move along. But we've got a bunch of interviews. I sent out a bunch of invitations or inquiries and kind of requests to different makers that I know, trying to see if they would be interested in being on the podcast, and almost every one of them has said yes. And so, well, actually everybody I've heard back from has said yes, let's do it. So we've got a bunch scheduled up, and some of them are bit makers, some of them are hat makers. There's a cinch maker in there. So we're going to get a lot of different types of craftspeople that are just supporting the Western lifestyle cowboy gear trade thing. That's a really long thing. I've got to find it. I think I'm just going to do Western lifestyle artist, Western lifestyle craftsman, something. But that's what we want to do, is shed light and bring these craftsmen to the foreground here, where people can meet them, and we can all, a lot of these people we follow on Facebook or Instagram, and we know them already. Or feel like we do, but we've never, heard their story, and that's what I want to get into, because we all come into our own particular trade, usually pretty uniquely, and we want to dive into that and kind of visit with those folks and stuff like that. And I may even work on having some cowboy artists on there as well. I don't want to limit or corner this podcast up where we have to be real critical of who we have on and that sort of deal. I'm going to try to tie in all of the Western lifestyle stuff that's out there. And so there are a couple very prominent artists, just fine artists, that I want to have on and visit with them as well, because some people separate art and craftsmanship, but to me they go together. I guess I tie that together just because I dabbled in the arts as well, and so far from being at a level that they are, but I do dabble in all forms of art, and to me there's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into that. So we want to visit with those guys too. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I don't know if it's going to be I'm sure it'll be at least once a week we'll have an interview out. Like I said, I've already got one pretty well ready to go, so there'll be one this week. But there may be times when I just boom, like maybe every couple of days there's a new one hitting or something, until we get a lot of them in the pipeline there to where they're archived on our deal, to where if you want to binge listen all day long, for some reason want to binge listen to me talking, then we'll have a bunch of them on there. So, but it'll probably end up getting to where it's once a week, something like that. There's some new challenges with the podcast for me as far as on the production side of things. I'm gotten fairly good at doing the videos, editing for our style of video and for what we create. I can run through them pretty quickly, like this video, the Monday morning. I can shoot it right now, Monday morning, 7:30, and then by 9 or 10 o'clock, I've got it uploaded to YouTube. Usually the reason it goes out so late in the evening is because my internet here isn't the lightning fast internet that most people have in big cities, so it just takes time to get it up to the tubes in the sky. So, but as far as the podcast, it's a little bit more challenging because of the editing. I'm not quite as quick on the audio editing, but it's working out. It's not too terribly difficult, and it does upload a lot quicker and easier. So I don't think once a week is going to be a problem as long as we've got the interviews lined up. And as of right now, I've got a ton of requests out, and everybody's ready to go. So we should be good to go for maybe the rest of the year. Because the year is winding down. We are halfway through October, that much closer to the election. I can't wait to get this all behind us. But then we got the holiday season. And so before we know it, Christmas will be here. And so we've all been talking about Christmas online and in here and on the Monday videos. So we're not going to beat a dead horse. But Christmas is coming in fast. So before we know it, it will be Christmas and New Year's. I have a feeling there will be big parties New Year's Eve to get 2020 out the door, and hopefully 2021 isn't its sister. You know what I mean? Everything's going good. Podcast is out. Be sure, like I said, if you want, subscribe to the podcast on Apple and Spotify. And if you're there and you like the podcast, give us a review on there if you don't mind. Supposedly that helps a bunch. It's another platform that we're just trying to learn, but I know with Apple the reviews are really big on there. So if you get a chance, leave us a review, and let's see if we can get it trending and get some people listening to the podcast that maybe are not craftsmen currently or not really into the Western lifestyle, but maybe this will bring them into that and at least educate them a little bit on what we do, why we do it, and how much demand there is out there for what we do, because our art is not dead. And that's why we named it Lost Trade, because it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek type statement of saying, yeah, it's not lost because we all do this for a living, or at least as a side hustle or as a passionate hobby. But there's craftsmen out there every day keeping a lot of these things alive that the general public just doesn't even know there's a demand for. And so I think it's neat. I think it's fun. And so we're going to do that. And thank you guys so much for everybody that has already subscribed and listened to the episodes and sent us some feedback on that. We really appreciate it. All right, so I made it through Claudia's belt cutting list last week, and we got a lot of the belts cut. So I've got a lot of belts to tool this week. That's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be tooling a lot of those, and got some stirrup leathers ready to go and some different things for the saddles. We'll talk about that in just a second. I got my fenders and stirrup leathers ready to be put together for that roping saddle, and the other ones for the ranch saddle. We'll be working on that. Real quick, I'm going to give you a tip. This is kind of an embedded tip in a Monday morning video to see if people are paying attention, but I don't know how many saddle makers out there are watching right now and want to know, how do you size a fender for a particular person? When I build a custom saddle, I like for the fenders and stirrup leathers to be the proper size for the person I built the saddle for, and that way when they get it the first time and they sit in it, their feet are fairly close to where they need to be, and they don't have a bunch of excess stirrup leather hanging down underneath the bin there where the stirrup hangs, because then they just end up cutting it off or rolling it back, and I hate seeing that on my saddle. So I want it to, they're ordering a custom saddle, I want it to fit properly. Everybody's probably got their own way of figuring that out, but I'm going to tell you how I figure it out, and it's just a real quick, easy deal. I came up with a very complicated calculus-based equation that might help you. I'm just kidding. It's just simple math. But what you do is you take the person's inseam, and this guy's inseam in particular was 30 inches. So you take the inseam, crotch to floor while they're standing there. They can be wearing boots preferably, because that's what they'll be wearing in the saddle, but it's not that precise. So as long as you get a decent inseam, 30 inches, and then I take 30 inches and I add 4.5 inches to that. Now, the 4.5 inches roughly is that thickness of the bar from the top where the stirrup leather rounds over the top to the base of the bar. So as you're looking at it, if you were to pull your fender up, that piece right there of the bar where the stirrup leather lays. So that's roughly 4.5 inches. So we take 30 plus 4.5, that's 34.5 inches. Divide that by 2. So you're going to cut that in half. So that gives us about 17.25 I go ahead and round that to the nearest half. So we'll go 17 and a half. I'd rather have more than not enough, so always round up if you can. But we'll do 17 and a half. Then, I had to grab my book. Most of y'all know this book, Al Stolman Encyclopedia of Saddle Making. That's it. I think there's 3 volumes of these that he had created. They're very, very good books. They're very, I would suggest, it's quite a bit of money if you go buy all 3 of them at one time, but get the first one, and then as you can, add the second and the third. If you want to build saddles and all that, they're a great reference to have in your shop. I don't do a whole lot of what Al Stolman did when I'm building saddles, but it's a good benchmark to go back and see how somebody else does something. It's very, very specific inside this book. There's a lot of detail and a lot of imagery that will help you to see exactly what he's doing, and then you can modify to fit your style or how you were taught. And so I really enjoy referencing this back every once in a while just to make sure that my math or my mind is right if I want to change the style or the way I'm doing something. It just gives me another perspective. Like I said, I don't build really at all kind of the way he does, but some of the aspects of it are. But one neat thing in this book is in the first volume, this is volume 1, there's a chart in here that Mr. Stolman created, and this chart has been in my shop, and we used to have it posted on the wall in the old shop, and everybody used it. We used it in repair, custom, everything. But in this chart, if you get this book, he's got basically for any type of buckle, whether you're using, most people use Blevins. I'm just going to use Blevins buckles, that's it. But then he's also got it in here for laced, and then a buckle called an Al Ray buckle, which are almost extinct. Nobody uses those anymore except on like the Mexico import saddles and stuff like that, as far as from my experience. And maybe somebody out there is still using them, but I don't particularly like that buckle at all. Anyway, he's got the different measurements, but what you do is you use your fender length that we just came up with, 17 and a half for this gentleman here, and you find 17 and a half on the chart and go towards the right, and he'll give you what length to cut these stirrup leathers for every different buckle. Now obviously you're going to use the Blevins one more than likely, or maybe the laced one, but like on his chart here, 17 and a half inch fender, he calls for a 58 inch stirrup leather. So that's how long you would cut your stirrup leathers. We fine-tuned it just a little bit, and whatever his measurement says in this book, I'm not going to inch off. So he said 58, I'm going to cut these stirrup leathers 57. A lot of that has to do with the point of the stirrup leather, how mine's real shallow. I don't have a real steep point on there. And just the way I lay out my holes in there, knocking that 1 inch off helps to get everything a little bit tighter where everything fits just right, and I don't have anything hanging down below that bend where the stirrup hangs. And that's real important to me because that's a hazardous point right there. If you've got a little tab of stirrup leather hanging down below that bend, and you try to get out of a saddle or try to reposition your feet and your toe is catching that, it can cause an issue, especially if you're on a young horse or something that you need to kind of be fluid and smooth, and you don't need to be accidentally cueing him or scaring him, just trying to hunt your stirrup or get your foot out of the stirrup, especially in an on-off situation. You don't want that to happen. So I don't want anything in the area of the stirrup hanging down in there. But that's what I do. If you have this book, that chart is in there. If you don't have this book, go out and get, if you can. They're expensive, but they're very good and they're valuable. And if you have an interest in building saddles, I would highly recommend having at least the first one in your arsenal of resource material. But it's the Al Stolman or the Stolman Encyclopedia of Saddle Making. Preferably yours won't have dog bites all over it and gnaw marks and stuff from a dog that used to live in the shop and was part of the shop, and his name was Bill. And Bill was a very large border collie, a slick-haired border collie, short-haired border collie that belonged to my brother. And Bill lived in the shop. We had an apartment in there. Ben lived in there for a couple of years, I guess. But Bill was at work every day in the shop, played fetch with all the customers. He was annoying. But when he was a puppy, he liked to chew on stuff, and so he chewed my encyclopedias. But he's a good dog. He passed away a few years ago. He got old. I think he was 15 whenever we finally had to put him down. He was a good dog, but he had the Frisbee dog syndrome where his hips were just shot and he just couldn't get up anymore, and it was a sad day. But he was a good dog. He gets a lot of credit whenever I get some old customers that come in the shop sometimes and say, "Hey man, you still got Bill?" They remember Bill. Might not have seen him for 5, 6, 8 years, and no, he's gone, you know. But they remember playing fetch with him. You'd stand in the shop and you'd feel something on your foot, and you'd look down, and he would bring a piece of leather over and set it on your foot, and a customer would be like, "What the heck?" And I'd say, "Throw it," and they would pick it up and throw it, and he'd just go barreling across the shop, knocking stuff down to get that piece of leather. But he would play all day long. Like, you had to make him stop. He wasn't going to stop. So he was a very neat dog. But yeah, he chewed my encyclopedia. So oh wells. But that's a quick tip. Went on a little tangent there, but that's a quick tip. Take their inseam, add 4.5 inches, divide that by 2, then go to your chart. That dividing it by 2 is going to give you how long your fender needs to be. Your fender length is measured from this bend right here. You don't count your fender leg. That's independent of the fender. You measure from right here at the base of that, to your top. So this fender here is 17.5 inches long. And then your fender leg is actually supposed to be determined by what type of buckle you're using. So if you were going to do, mine are usually around 11 inches, 10.5 to 11 inches long for a Blevins buckle. If you're going to do a Nevada twist, I think that's what they call it, where you bind this up and you put your Blevins on backwards and you turn around. All you Wade guys do that. And I think it looks really, really cool, but I'm not a big fan of it. I've had a lot of customers down here want it just because all the clinicians have it and stuff, and so we'll do it, but to me, it adds a little bit more bulk in front of your ankle, and so I'm just not a fan of it, but I'm probably not doing it right because I'm an old Texas saddle maker. But anyway, when I do one of those, I've learned that you've got to make this 12 inches, and I could be wrong. You Wade saddle makers might have a better idea of why I'm having to add that length on there. I'm probably not doing it right, but I make this 12 inches long. That gives you enough room to bind that up, you know, and shape it up and everything else. But that, like I said, the leg is independent of the fender length. So whatever your math gets you from the inseam, that's how long your fender needs to be. And man, I've done it like that for, shoot, I bet I've been doing them that way for 10 years at least. And it's just something we finally figured out, because I hated seeing people cut through my stirrup leather and trying to shorten it or having it wrapped around. And it works every time. It just works. Like when they get in the seat, their feet, for the first time, their feet will fall right into the stirrups. And they may need to go up a hole or down a hole on the stirrup leathers depending on how they like to ride. That's the deal, is like, it depends on their style. Some people ride real straight-legged. Some people ride, cutters ride real short. I've got a customer of mine that's, I think he's 9 foot tall. No, I think he's not much taller than me, maybe 6'8", 6'3". But he's a tall dude. Yeah, he's like I think he's 6'7", 6'8", somewhere around there. Just all legs, but he rides cutting horses, and he's very good at the cutting horse thing and all that, and he rides a surprisingly short fender. Way too long for you or I, but it's surprisingly short compared to what you would think it is on him. And so you'll find that sometimes that will throw you off a little bit, depending on the style the person rides. That was going to depend. A lot of times you can just measure the saddle that they're currently riding if you want a dead-on match, and then adjust your stirrup length from there. But this math will help you make sure that they have the right size fender in there, because you don't want the fender hanging out from the bottom of the seat, the top of the fender, and you also don't want so much fender up inside the ground seat there to where they can't get it up anymore, because that's also going to bind that fender where they can't move their legs very comfortably. So if you can dial that in, if you're building saddles, try to dial the fender and stirrup leathers in a little bit, get them to where they fit them properly, and then I bet you'll have more positive feedback as far as the way the saddle rides, how their hips feel, the way their feet feel when they're being able to move their feet around. Everything will be a lot better. A lot of times the ground seat issues can be led down to the stirrups, on where they are, the difficulty of their range, and just how they feel in general for the person. And so all that stuff goes together. So that's just a little trick just to maybe hopefully help you out. Like I said, I'll throw it in this video and see if anybody catches it. Let's see what we did on these saddles this week. Let me get some more coffee. All right, this saddle, we've got the skirts on last week. I don't know if I had that on the Monday video or not, but we got the skirts on there, and then I got the, get her all lined up here. But I got what I call final cut, which once I get my skirts on, I don't have a lot of patterns for my saddle, so it's not like I have a perfect skirt pattern I can just cut out and stick on there. I go ahead and it's a little bit wild, and I trim the back and straighten the bottom, and then make my port cuts and where my rigging's going to be and all that stuff. So we set this, we're going to do an in-skirt rig here with that round ring like we talked about last week. So I've got my holes, my port cut in there, port cut in the rear, and then we've got everything set. I've got this set at full position. I always go back a little bit off full because I don't want it ahead of full at all, but I'll move it back just a little bit, but we're nowhere near 7/8 on that particular rig there. But yeah, it's ready to go. Got the kennel back on. We may have had that on last week, I'm not sure, but it's ready to go. I also had the fenders. I've got the fenders cut for this one as well, so we'll get those sized this week and get the stirrup leathers while I do them other ones. We'll get those all done. These are going to be a cutting style fender. I like putting those in our ranch saddles. Most of the guys down here, they want 2.5 inch full stirrup leathers in there, and with a nice little thin cutter fender that allows their legs to move easily. A lot of these guys ride a lot of colts and stuff, and so this makes it a little bit more comfortable for them, especially on those all day works and stuff like that. The roper here, it's ready for a seat to be put in. We've got the housing fit, trimmed, shaped, everything's good. They're already in place, edge dyed, they're ready to go. So now we're ready to put our plugs in here. We're going to do a Cheyenne roll, so we're going to put our plugs in this week, get a seat fit in there, and make all the little junk that goes with it. And this dude will be rolling out here pretty quick. Maybe this week, maybe we can get it done this week. If not, it'll be the first part of next week. Both of these should be done by then. But yeah, it's ready to go. This one is on the hog tree. This one's on a Ray Lewis tree. I love the tree in this ranch saddle. It's one of my favorite trees. But this hog tree is really, really good too. I'm getting to where I really, really like the finished saddle on these trees. So between Ray and this one, I'm working on 2 trees I love to build on, because this Ray Lewis tree always covers well and just looks nice whenever it's done. I know some of you are going to be upset, but I had to get these moving. So, but we are going to do a video on making chaps. I told y'all that. After we posted the one on this one, it's just like, well, we'll have to do it. So we're going to do it. Claudia's picking out her leathers as we speak and getting all excited. So I'll be building her a pair of chaps. But this pair, we got them all fringed, and I just do it with a knife and a straight edge is how I do it. But we got our panels sewn on, and so they're ready to go. I fringe them after I sew my panels on. You're going to be a lot better off waiting to fringe towards the end like we are here, because I've done the fringe first before, and then you're sewing these panels on, and inevitably you'll get one of these fringe inside there and sew it down. So just wait to fringe till you get your side panels and your yokes put on there. Yep, we got everything ready to go. We're ready to put on buckles and straps and do a back belt and a front belt, and we'll be good to go. Scott has some conchos. Scott made a buckle for the front, so that'll go up there, and then he made some conchos for these. Just some little slotted ones that'll go right there, and I think they're pretty cool. So we'll put 2, one on each side. I think that's going to look pretty neat. But yep, that's what we're going to do. Just put those little conchos on. Now they'll be held on the belts. There'll be a lace that runs through there, and that'll hold the leg belts on. And so that's what'll hold them together. But yep, those are ready to finish up. So we'll get these done this week. And we're going to do a laced in back belt. So it'll be 2 inches wide, 1.5 inches wide, laced in. And these will be ready to go. Now another little project that I did last week, well, I did on Friday. I just wanted to get it tooled. This isn't for anybody, it'll be for sale. But I wanted to try, I've seen a lot of people doing this, and I want to thank everybody on Facebook that commented, or Instagram that commented on my version of this big weave type thing, a basket weave, like a literal basket weave is what it's supposed to look like, not like the set stamp. And that's the first time I've ever done that. I figured everybody was doing it with a set of tools. It's not one stamp, but I had never tried it, and I was going to quilt this. So what happened was I quilted this, and then I put all my cedars in, and then I thought, man, that'd be really neat to try to see if I can figure out the bevel on that thing. And I figured it out, and it's not super difficult. I'll do a little video on how I do it. I don't know if it's the way everybody else does it, because I've seen a lot of people do this, but I'll do a video showing how I did this. But when I got it done, I thought I wish I wouldn't have done the cedars, because I think it kind of took away from it a little bit. It seemed to be about 30-70 on Facebook, maybe. Some 30% of people like the cedars, and then everybody else is like, yeah, I probably left that off. So I think then next time I'm not going to put any kind of cedars if I'm doing that deal, because even looking at it this morning, I was like, yeah, it'd look more realistic if the cedars weren't in the way. They kind of break the line. So, but I think it'll look cool anyway. I mean, it's a piece for the sales floor. This one's going to be really neat. I'm going to do something. I'm going to attempt to do something. I'm not going to say I'm going to do it until I'm done it, because I don't know if it's going to work. But I'm going to attempt to two-tone this with turquoise Angelus paint. So I'm going to thin it down really good, and I'm going to try to two-tone with that. I've got some turquoise dye, so I may play with that too. And see if that might work better. But the reason is because if you're following our Instagram stories, a couple of weeks ago I got some turquoise kangaroo skins from Robert at Lewis Leather Sales, which are absolutely beautiful, and I think they're going to make really nice interiors, which that's what I use them for. But that turquoise would make a really nice interior on a turquoise themed clutch wallet. So this is a ladies clutch wallet, so is what it's going to be. And we've got a project video on making these if you've never made one of these before, but they're real popular. But I'm going to try to do that turquoise paint. I think it'll work, and I think it'll look really cool. It's going to be overkill on the turquoise, but I don't care. I'm just want to make something wild. I'm also going to buck stitch this, and I probably will buck stitch it with turquoise kangaroo lace as well. Again, a lot of turquoise, but turquoise is cool. I like turquoise. I think it'll look cool. We're gonna see. We'll see how it turns out and go from there. But that's what we're gonna work on. But that's about all I got for you this weekend. Just worked at the house, got some more of the pins done, did a bunch of welding, stuff like that. Hung out with the family. We had a good time. We're getting closer to Halloween, and so here in Moulton they have a trunk or treat on Main Street Halloween night. I think it's from 5 to 7. So if you're in the area, I think we're going to be open for that. We're having my little boy's birthday that day, so Halloween day. We're going to have his birthday party at a little venue out here, and we've got some friends coming down. We're going to do that, and then of course Halloween night we're going to go trick-or-treating. This town's really nice for that old school type trick-or-treating where you can go walk around town and actually trick-or-treat and not worry about getting you know how it is. Cities, I wouldn't trick-or-treat nowhere. And so we're going to do that, but it starts here on Main Street with the trunk or treat, and so they'll have like vendors out here and they'll do stuff, and some of the businesses open up, and I think we're going to be open and hand out candy and stuff here at the shop, and people can come in and kind of check it out. We haven't had a grand opening. I don't know if I'll do a grand opening here. Honestly, I might do some type of funny play on grand opening. I don't know, because I feel weird doing a grand opening. I've been in business 15 years, but I guess here it would be a grand opening for this location, so we sure might do that. But this will be kind of like that, Halloween. We'll dress up as goblins and ghouls and decorate everything, and then let everybody come by and get some candy and check out the shop and that kind of stuff. So if you are in the area and you're going to be around that evening, 5 to 7, the shop will be open. Otherwise, we'll be around town trick-or-treating with the kids. And so we got a bunch of friends coming and bringing their kids and stuff, and so that'll be a lot of fun. But that's all I've got for you this week. I hope everybody's staying safe out there, and I hope you have a good, productive week and enjoy yourself. We're supposed to be getting some cooler weather down in these parts, so if you're in Texas area, southern states, we're supposed to start seeing some cooler weather, and we're all excited about that. But thank y'all again for everybody that's listened to the podcast and has given us some feedback. If you haven't already, be sure and go to Apple or Spotify and search Lost Trade. That's the name of our new podcast, and we've got episodes coming out directly, and I think you'll enjoy it. And be sure to give us a review on there. And if you haven't, sign up for the Leathercraft newsletter and subscribe to this channel. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.